in my subsequent chapter of research, I have just notified about the prospective fighting this evil of domestic violence. That is multiple layers of intervention and action needed. So far, efforts on the ground, that is the gender issue, have defined the fundamental and easy remedies. Eliminating all forms of violence against women necessitates channeling the attention and efforts of interested parties at the same time and working collaboratively, So, when we talk about this sensitive subject necessitates intervention and action of several levels, including the state, the society, and individuals, and both the public and the private parties. Now, at the government level, when we see the government level, we can just put up that the most essential immediate responsibility of the government is to arrest the deteriorating law and order situation. Now, almost we lawyers every day we receive a case pertaining to either dowry or domestic violence, or anything, a POXCO, that is the prevention of sexual harassment against children. So all this violent, it is becoming rampant, especially in pandemic. We observed this in our research. So in my research, sorry, immediate and time bound justice is required. Very important. Immediate and time bound justice. Of course, as to arrest this possibility that we can reduce the occurrence. Delayed justice boosts the morale of the criminal minded members of the society who exploit legal loopholes in the to avoid the prosecution. Very important. We always say that justice delayed is justice denied. So naturally, very very important aspect is immediate and time bound justice. Now, reforming the structure and systems of governmental organization involve the lawmaking and enforcement responsibilities is extremely desired, but it may take longer time. Now, the role of NGOs. We see NGO groups and institutions should hold a series of seminars and workshops in various locations on various issues of violence and oppression against women. They should discuss in depth the gravity, the enormity, the danger of the country in these issues constantly deteriorating law and order situation, deteriorating human values, individual self-centered attitude, very very important, and an alarming rise in bestial act against women, which makes it extremely dangerous for women to move freely outside their home and try to find solution. So very very important is the media, the role of the media. So yes, women issues should be aggressively brought to the public attention through the media. They have the potential to play a key role in raising awareness. They can provide a forum for speakers and panelists from many fields as well as notable persons, very, very important to invite lawyers who have won nice cases pertaining to women, and yes, social workers who are very, very keen in expressing what they find in the society and what should be done to avoid such occurrences. So yes, decision making position to express their perspectiveness and undertake an in-depth study in various gender values, viewing it holistically, and yes, of course, teaching various elements of this topic. Views of some of the victims of atrocities should be also very, very, very important, that it should be considered in order to comprehend their painful experiences and how they overcome the agonies caused by the inhuman act. So, of course, the next is the family level. At the most basic level, the family is the first and the most important institution where children learn their first lessons about humanity and social, we say about social connections, connections. Family is the finest location to instill positive values in children and teens of all sexes, such as yes, very, very important aspects, that is honesty, simplicity, modesty, a feeling of duty and respect for elders, and especially women. So, yes, we found that childhood is the most formative, instructive, and impressionable phase of a person's life. And it's the most ideal moment to instill such principles, since it remains permanently and embedded in their sensitive mind throughout their lives. Therefore, gender sensitization training should be provided inside the family. All children should be treated equally and with regard for gender from their start. So, yes, everything begins. We say that charity begins at home. So, yes, very, very important aspect is the family. Women's part, very important. Women, instead of bearing all the horrors inflicted against them, yeah, this silently they should raise their they should raise their women against injustice, raise the awareness amongst women from the rights about their rights, and channel their efforts by by publishing articles, organizing seminars, workshops, and so on. They should join hands and work together regardless of their social situations in society. They must speak out strongly against social problems such as dowry or maybe even intimate partner violence. They should come out and speak of what's happening to them, bride burning, female infanticide, and also many other atrocities that we lawyers see nowadays. We say modernization, but in modern era also there are a lot of other crimes happening, which we can categorize it as, of course, domestic violence, because even intimate partner violence we see are rampant nowadays. So women should be extremely vigilant, both mentally and physically, to safeguard their that the safety and security, so that no one may, of course, no one should exploit them. No one should exploit them, and when they are placed in difficult situations of life, they must always be prepared. They must always be prepared for self defense by taking some classes, like nowadays almost all are into karate, judo, and all. So in case there is self defense needed, so she should be also well equipped with such professional training. So when we talk about domestic violence as a human rights issue, my next consideration in my research was the as we say, women rights are human rights. Women rights are human rights. So of course, very, very important aspect is human beings are born free in India, but women's independence has traditionally been overlooked in the sake of tradition, honor, family welfare, and social pride. So, human rights are vital to our own existence, and they represent that can be called as basic rights from which no deviation in civilized society is tolerated. So, of course, very, very important is, in other words, human rights are those rights that are inherent in our nature and without which we cannot live as human beings. So, according to Section 2D of the Protection of Human Rights Act, very, very important, Section 2D, human rights are the rights of the person to life, liberty, equality, and dignity guaranteed by our constitutions or enshrined on international conventions and enforceable by Indian courts. As a result, human rights and fundamental freedoms are inherent in all human beings, including women. So, therefore, their protection, their promotion is the first obligation of the government. It's the first obligation of the government. Now, various crimes against women nowadays violate women's human rights. Women's human rights. Now, women's human rights generally include the right to equality before the law, the right to be free from gender discrimination, the right to be free from harassment. See, the word harassment occurs. The right to abortion, the right to privacy, and the right to economic empowerment. Very, very important clause over here is the economic empowerment of an woman. Recently, the right against domestic violence has been recognized as a human right in the international women conventions. Very important, friends. Yes, domestic violence is defined as the violent victimization of women within the confines of the family, mainly by men, husbands, or relatives or his relatives to whom the women are married or have a marital life. The physical and psychological violence are also possible. Domestic violence is a threat or aggressive behavior directed towards women that affects not only their physical being but also their self-esteem. Yes, self-esteem is attacked, and self-confidence. According to 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that is UDHR, women are human, women are human, and yes, hence they have the same human rights as everyone else, such as the rights to liberty, equality, the freedom from slavery, and of course servitude, the freedom from torture or cruel, unhuman, or humiliating treatment or punishment, the freedom to move, the freedom of opinion and expression, the right of prosperity, and so on. Domestic violence thus violate the UDHR, that is Article 1 states that all human beings are born free and equal to dignity and rights. Article 3 states that everyone has a right to life, liberty, and personal security. Article 5, no one until is subjected to torture, no one shall be subjected to torture, cruel, or degrading treatment or punishment. Similarly, we have Article 12, where it states that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his or her privacy, family, home, or correspondence, or to the attacks on his or her honor and character. Everyone has a legal right to be protected from such interference or attacks. Naturally follows Article 18. Everyone has a right to a social and international order and allow them to fully realize the rights and freedom that is enshrined in our declaration, UDHR declaration. So domestic violence has violated the provisions of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights 1966, such as the right to life, freedom of opinion, expression, privacy, freedom of movement, and choice of residence, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights 1966, such as the right to work, the right to health, the right to care, the right to adequate standard of living, including food, clothing, and housing, right to take part in cultural life, etc. Domestic violence is unquestionably a human right issue as recognized by the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action in 1993 and the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action in 1995. When my research also includes in its general recommendations, the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, emphasized that state parties should take action to safeguard women against violence of any sort, including violence inside the home, or domestic violence. As a result, India, as the same party, included into the Indian Constitution all human rights and stated by the United Nations General Assembly, of course, wherein the fundamental rights were included in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, whereas the directive principles were placed in Part 4. According to Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, no one shall be deprived of life or personal liberty unless or accordance with the method established by law. And of course, when we say methods established by law, we say that the right to live with dignity, the right to shelter, the right to privacy, and so on. One of the most well recognized human rights is the right to dignity. It is, it's an important human right, since other human rights cannot be implemented in the absence of a right to dignity. Dignity is associated with the identity of a human being. Dignity is associated with the identity of a human being. So naturally, it is an important human right. It is an important human right as a person. When a human being lacks the right to be a person, dignity does not exist. So domestic violence violates a woman's dignity and threats to her as a animal or a chattel. So domestic violence violates Article 21 of the Indian Constitution and affects the victims, women's self-esteem and dignity. When we talk about domestic violence, puts women in a bad situation, whether they are educated or ignorant. Domestic violence occurs behind closed doors in our country, especially India. It is considered as a private matter. As a result, families, neighbors, police, and others are often hesitant to intervene. Women from all walks of life, income levels, educational levels also, we see that in all the levels, socioeconomic strata are victims of this violence. Cruelty and wife beating are the most common types of violence in our society, yet they are considered very rarely reported, because they are unaware of their basic human rights. We saw that especially in rural areas, women are not aware of their basic human rights. So yes, of course, in cases of domestic violence, the victim woman is frequently afraid of the social shame of living alone, so-called family prestige and future of her children, financial troubles, and so on, and is unable to leave her married house and suffer the pain silently. Women's attitudes have shifted slightly in recent years. We saw that women today are aware of their human rights. They no longer endure passively. Instead, they criticize their husbands and in laws' cruel and inhuman behavior. Of course, they file an FIR with the police station under Section 498A of the IPC to try to stop the violence and punish their husbands and the relatives under the law. Even in rural areas, now we see even the panchayat helping out the women. Mostly in the rural areas of Maharashtra, every district has a protection officer there, and it's very pertinent to know that these women officers, they conduct seminars. I personally was invited by Savantawadi, the palace, the Rajmata she owns, and she is in charge of the administration of the law college in the area. And I remember she, in one of the International Women Day, she had invited for tehsildars and women officers of rural areas to attend a seminar where I was called to speak about various women laws. So nowadays we see in the rural areas that yes, women organizations and various influential women are, making a change, and just keeping the awareness level, so that if anybody in their area, in their jurisdiction, where these women officers are working, like maybe they are tehsildars, maybe they are any officers in state level and district level, they are empowered to train and their substaff and go out to the villages and check out if there are any issues. So these are the things which we found in the areas of Konkan area especially. There are many incidents of extreme domestic violence like dowry death, murder, so on, where the perpetrator, with the active cooperation of the authorities, destroy the in, yes, incriminating evidence of the crime and thereby escape punishment. Female feticide, killing a girl child before she is born, and female infanticide, killing a female newborn soon after her birth, especially with the parents' approval. Marital rape, yes, marital rape, such sati pratha and other forms of violence undermine the fundamental identity of a womanhood and violate the, yes, of course, human rights. They violate the human rights, basic human rights. Now, all of this horrific domestic violence demonstrate the woman as a gender are undesired on this planet. Because because the notion that a female kid is a liability and a boy is an asset is deeply ingrained in Indian society, and we can see this rampant in the rural areas. So, yes, in my next, I'll be doing the constitution and legal provisions for women in my next chapter of my research, which we found were the constitutional and legal provisions of women I have mentioned. So, over to the next chapter.